Oh yeah. Hello everyone. Welcome to our Campfire conversations. It's the third episode, and today we have guests from the Pixel Hunt and Igal and IKO. So Igal from IKO and Florent from the Pixel Hunt are with us today, and we want to try their game Inua, a story in ice and time, and get to know a bit more about the development, the idea behind the game, the design process, and I think we planned way more questions than we can answer in the
Definitely.
time span that we got. But very, very glad to have you here. First of all, very quick introduction to those who don't know us yet. We are Ines and Sasha from Off the Beaten Track, a German indie game developer from Kiel, working on what we call games that make a difference. So we always like to develop games that are fun, but also a bit more than fun, maybe change your worldview a bit or leave a lasting impact. And we're always looking for other games that we think fit that as well, and that are from the narrative side of games. And that's why we got threw an eye onto Inua, A Story in Ice and Time. And very glad to have Igal and Flora with us today. Would you introduce us quickly?
Florent, please.
Yeah, I'm trying to multitask because I want to promote our talk as we speak. So I was writing on Twitter. Shame on me. My name is
No, you're
Florent.
doing well. That's great.
Yeah, I try. My name is Florent. I'm the head of a tiny video game studio called the Pixel Hunt. We do something a little bit akin to off the beaten track path or track. Because we do what we call reality-inspired games, because I'm a former journalist. I've been a journalist for 10 years, and I think that the real world has a lot of interesting stories to tell. So we always try to work on games that have a link to the real world. That was the case for Inua, that we were very lucky to co-produce with IKO and their wonderful director, Igal Cohen.
Thank you so much for your kind introduction. I'm multitasking as well, promoting this stream on Twitter. So I'm Igal. I'm more of a producer than I'm a game designer or developer. I do come from more the audiovisual and cinema industry, and Inua is actually the first game of the company that we produce. So actually, I have way much more gratitude to Florent, who is more seasoned professional in this realm of the video game, and so I learned a lot from him and from the team during this experience. Yes, because it was our first game, and then shipping a game is as well an adventure in itself, and so I think we all learned a lot, like in promoting this project on Steam, Nintendo, and Apple, etc. So I could go on forever. This is what we do, and just to conclude, we do documentaries, VR, and video games.
I think that's very cool and inspiring to see that both of you are not or didn't start out in the video game industry, but got there some other way. I also studied something completely different. So,
what did you study?
Sociology and political science. But also I'm doing marketing and community work, so that fits my studies a bit, I guess. Florent, how big is the Pixel Hunt? How many team members do you have?
So the Pixel Hunt is really varying in size depending on the project. So we try to scope the projects according to the teams and the teams according to the projects. For our current project, The Wreck, our next game that is going to be out in a few months now, we used to be 4.5 people. I say 1.5 because
wow.
The person who was doing the animation was only working part-time on it. And now we are one, like, because everybody finished what they had to do, and I'm just waiting for the best release window. So it's only me. And for Inua, we were more than that. So it's really like getting bigger and smaller depending on where in productions we are. And this strategy has its pros and cons. In a way, it's a little annoying because it's hard to get a feeling that we are growing as a company. Because people who work with us, maybe they won't be available next time for the next project. Maybe they have signed a long-term contract with someone else, so we can't rely on what we learn, how we will learn to work together and everything. But it's also way more easy for me to be able to not live with a lot of pressure to have to accept any work that comes my way just because I have to pay the bills. So yeah, I kind of like this solution basically.
That's very interesting. That you are basically completely alone right now.
Yeah.
It sounds so sad, but also, I don't know, interesting, like cool opportunity. And
Yeah.
also, we are going that exact other way. So we are like, our company is the people. And then always trying to find a project that fits us. But both ways are totally viable. And I just want to quickly mention that I actually met Florent at Gamescom last week. We met at the Indie Arena booth where Florent was exhibiting the upcoming game, The Wreck. So that's also worth checking out, definitely. Graphically, it reminded me of the Cost of Recovery, the project that we worked on. Like a bit, it's always nice to find some similarities. But today we want to focus on Inua, which is already out. And yeah, I asked you to give us a little pitch. I don't know, did you decide who of you was going to give it? Yeah?
Yeah, I will.
Okay,
Right.
go ahead. Tell us
Okay,
what it's
so
about.
Inua is a mystical, story-driven, point-and-click genre adventure about three explorers who are traveling in the same places of the Great North in the northern Canada, but really decades apart. The first character, Taina, she's exploring the Great North. Sorry, yes, the first that you meet actually. She's exploring the Great North in 2016 actually, during the recovery of a shipwreck, which is like a shipwreck of one of the two boats of the Franklin expedition. The Franklin expedition is a really important real life event. It's an event that occurred at the middle of the 19th century when two boats left England to discover the Northwest Passage in the northern Canada and got lost. And nobody could recover them and hear about them. And those two shipwrecks were found finally, 150 years later, in 2014 and 2016, effectively, if I'm not mistaken. And so we could retrace what happened to those sailors, and we learned that they were stuck in ice for 3 years, and some of them decided to leave the boats and travel down south, but nobody know what happened to them. And then so it's a real story, but which has holes in it. We don't know what happened exactly. So we are using that story to actually try to fill those holes and bring some meaning to it. The second character that you encounter is one of the sailors of that expedition, who actually takes control of the crew of the sailors and decide to march south with them. And the third character that we meet is a documentary filmmaker in the 50s, with the first personal cameras, and he's going south. He's going north with a bunch of military men to actually do some research and recognition about what appears to be missiles that are shot, maybe by Russians or whatever. And so we have three characters in respectively 2016, 18, 1950 or so and 1956, and they are traveling in the same places. And the goal for the player is to actually discover who or what he is himself, because he can travel from one era to another and try to discover and go forward with the story, unlocking scenes that he can explore, traveling in between eras. That's already a long pitch.
But a convincing one, I gotta say.
Thank
It's
you.
also a complex story, so I think it needs a long pitch.
Thanks.
And we got the time here. It's not an elevator pitch where you have to be done in 30 seconds.
It's an elevator pitch in a very big building.
Yes.
Yeah.
A very tall one, yeah.
So you have a lot of time in. Yeah, sure.
But I mean, it already sounds intriguing because I love having different perspectives, and then adding that different time eras to that is really great. And it already, we can already think of a few questions, but I think let's first dive into the game, check it out a bit, and then we can see which questions came up. So I never played the game before. I totally wanted to, and I'm very glad that I finally have a good opportunity to do so. But I never played it before, so it's gonna be my very first impression. I'm
Nice.
gonna start the
Live.
game and stream it to you in a second.
Actually, so it's really an adventure about understanding your environment and the people around you. The deeper meaning of the game and the message we are trying to convey through that game is mainly this.
So you guys should be able to see it via my Discord stream, I think. And then I changed the view, so now we're in the game, and let's see. Let's go. I guess I turned on the sound a little bit in a second. That's always our problem. Every game starts out too loud. I think like this should be fine. That's really weird to be watched by 3 people who all know the game. At least it's not a platformer where I can do everything wrong and stuff.
Don't do anything wrong, Ines.
Oh no, oh no.
Yep. Don't make any mistakes.
Because if you do, it formats your whole PC. So
Yes.
Oh, this is already so beautiful.
I love the intro.
should we leave you to play it without any comment, or should we maybe chime in and give you a little bit of context about the production while you play? Do you want to be able to focus and we shut up? Or...
I think just for the intro scene, let's stay quiet, I guess.
Okay.
But afterwards, any commentary is welcome. I love the color schemes, gotta say.
Nice.
So quiet, suddenly.
This life was explained to me through the story of Nanuruluk, the colossal bear. No paws, teeth, nor others' patience measured to its own. It walked the earth for many seasons, growing until the land was too small for its comfort.
Before we continue, now we can talk, right?
Yes.
I gotta say, in preparation for the stream, I played the first part of the game again and watched the intro and stuff. And I was so surprised that there was so much in the intro already that becomes relevant much later in the game. And I totally had forgotten. It was like in a lot of feature films, you like forget about the first 5 to 10 minutes of the movie, what happened there, and then something different happens. It was the same here. It was very interesting, mind blowing.
I'm sorry, I basically talked over you by clicking and then
That's all right.
the dialogue started. But is it fully voiced, the game? That's awesome.
It's fully voiced, except all texts are not external voices. There is a lot of internal voices of like thoughts, and those are not voiced because we wanted to kind of convey the idea that what happens inside is not perceptible. Is that a word? From the outside. So yeah, there's no inner voice.
And it's also good to separate those two, right? To differentiate what's what. Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm 1 minute in, so I've no idea what I'm talking about.
You'll see.
Okay.
I didn't wake you, did I?
No, I'm up. Just fixing myself a coffee. So where are you now?
I just reached the Parks Canada research ship. Freezing my ass off waiting for Dr. Gervais to come show me around the boat. It's minus 15 here, more like minus 20 with the wind chill and...
Yeah, I didn't send you there to report the weather, Tana. Did you get a chance to read over the documents I sent?
Yes, sir. Got it all in my backpack in case I need a quick refresher. But as of 4 a.m. this morning, I'm a full-fledged expert on the Franklin expedition. Ready to turn it all into a great story. So long as I don't pass out in the middle of the interview.
Damn it, Tana. I thought I told you to get a good night's rest.
That was the plan, until my connecting flight was delayed for 8 hours. But at least it gave me plenty of time to get my mind off that weird dream.
Can you please just focus for a couple of days? I don't want to regret giving you this opportunity.
Uh-oh. Sounds like someone needs to finish his coffee. Well, can't stand around all day chit-chatting, David. Some of us have work to do.
Aha, there's her thought. Already gotta say, 2 things I really like are her voice. Her voice is so cool. And I mean, it's a small thing, but I like the speed of the dialogue. Because I'm an impatient person. And sometimes dialogue is, I don't know, very, very slow. But this has a nice speed.
Actually, sorry.
Hello? I have an
Please go.
appointment with Mr. Gervais.
It also depends a little bit on the machine. We had that issue on the rec. It can vary a little bit depending on your machine, but Inua is a very light game, so it's been and also developed by a very, very talented coder. So it's proven to be very fast on any computer, phone, Nintendo Switch. Works fine on all of them. So yeah.
Awesome. I wanted to ask, especially the first scene in the game is a very important decision, right? How do you introduce the player to the story and to the world and to the characters? Did you have a lot of discussion in like the design phase of like what would be the first scene, what would be the first character, or was it obvious to you?
Yeah, we like actually the total sum of the writing process has been quite complex. We had 2 authors, Nathalie Frassoni and Frédéric Bouvier, who actually brought the story in a non-video game narrative design form. There was a lot of blanks and it was like a complex process, but they had most of the intuitions and the intentions, and the majority of the characters came from their minds, and so we had then to actually take that material and transform it into like a script and dialogues of a video game, and it's been a long and quite complex process. Yeah.
See.
Yeah, and the first scene of the game actually moved around a little bit, but in the end, we were always pretty sure we wanted to start with Taina's timeline because it's the current one, basically.
Yeah.
It's the closest to our times there is, and it's also directly anchored in real life because the search for the shipwreck of the Erebus and the Terror is still ongoing nowadays. So it's really like something that links the whole story to the real world, and the fact that we took a real story, the story of the Franklin expedition, as an influence for the game. It was important for us to try to have the player understand that, and so starting the game with the Taina was one of the ways we found to make that, basically.
How long were you planning on
Makes
loitering
sense, yeah.
outside? You want to free?
You must be Alan Gervais. I'm Tina Hippolyte.
Taina, I can't wait to catch up, but my hands are full right now. Why don't you take a look around, try not to touch anything, and we'll get acquainted later, yes?
I just wanted to ask if you...
Fantastic.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah, totally. But I like that we were already introduced to it's one of the main mechanics, right? These tokens that give you a specific insight into the mind of others, I guess. So that's really interesting.
It's the main mechanic.
Yeah.
You find into the scene topics that are symbolized as tokens that you can instill or that you can actually invoke into the minds of characters and ask them about it. So these are the topics that surround those people, and they you can read their thoughts about it, and you can have them think about those topics and see if it triggers events in the world. So you see all those researchers from the scientific research ship, they know that there is this scientific, this journalist coming. Sorry, I'm talking about
No, I'm sorry. I clicked when you wanted to talk.
No, but it's all right. It's just like they all know about this journalist, and so you can ask them, what do you think? There's a journalist coming, and see what they think about, or if that triggers some reactions.
We knew the Terra had been stuck in the ice with the Erebus about 100 kilometers north of here.
I read about that. That's where things really started to go wrong for the Franklin expedition, right?
Right, and since the Erebus was found further south in 2014, we figured the Terra would be somewhere between those 2 points. Still, it was a stroke of luck that anyone found it at all, and in such good condition.
It must be so exciting. Imagine all the things we could learn from this.
We won't have to imagine for much longer. Hey, are you gonna use any of that in your piece?
I gotta say, now that we were talking about the mechanic, or the main mechanic, basically, I really liked it a lot, especially because it gave a voice to people that are probably much more quiet, or that don't say anything, right? The woman in the back, Maggie, she seems to be more like a quiet type, so she wouldn't actually have anything to say in a typical story, probably. But now that you can like look in your head, in her head, and hear or read what she's thinking, you can get a lot of different opinions and perspectives and viewpoints.
Yeah, I thought that when looking into the thoughts of this the boy in the boat, because basically he's annoyed that I'm there, and like he found the boat and stuff. And that's super cool, because that's obviously it's something he wouldn't talk openly about. He wouldn't say to me, but I can still see it in his mind. Yeah, that's super cool.
Was this like this kind of core mechanic, was this like an idea that was there very early? Is this something you kind of built the game on very early, or was this kind of developed during the, I don't know, prototyping or concept phase?
Hi, I'm Tanya from the
I
Discoverer.
don't remember exactly when we had this specific idea, but what I remember is that almost right from the start when we decided to turn Natalie and Fred's story into a video game, we thought about putting the player in the position of. So I'm sorry because I'm going to spoil the position, but you're playing as some kind of spirit, and that's why you are able to access players, NPCs' thoughts, and you are able to see backstage basically. And so this is like it went that way. We wanted players to get the feeling that they were playing as something else than one of the characters, and allowing players to access NPCs' thoughts was part of the series of elements that we designed for players to gradually understand that they were impersonating a spirit. That's not the only thing, but that's one of the things that came to us as ideas to convey that idea that players were actually impersonating a spirit.
And you call them NPCs, but actually all characters you see are NPCs, and all of them are playable too, in a sense, because you can instill in all of them, you can instill thoughts and try to read their minds about those topics. And the fact that you can, as a player, see behind the curtain what they think about is the center of what we are trying to say, meaning understanding your environment and understanding the people around you is of course easier for the player because he can read their mind. He can know exactly what they think about similar topics and how they can have opposite opinions on many kinds of very hard topics like surviving, for example. And so it brings that message, that mechanic brings that message too.
It's really interesting because initially I thought, well, I'm playing as China, and I'm wondering because I can read her thoughts too, and I guess it gets even more clearer when you enter other scenes where she isn't even present, that you're really above all of that.
Yep.
Her thoughts on tin cans. What do you think about tin cans?
Good question.
These tin cans are really well preserved.
We found them on a shelf in the pantry. I wouldn't crack one open, though.
Now I want to.
Let me guess, they've expired?
Worse, they may have been tainted with lead from a faulty sealing process.
Yes, I think I've read about that. You think that might have been what killed the crew?
Not necessarily. From our preliminary tests, the levels of lead in the crew's bones are consistent with those of other sailors at the time. Back then, your average Brit was exposed to higher levels of lead than we are today. The joys of living through the Industrial Revolution, I guess.
We'll have a toxicological analysis completed in the coming months. Then we'll know for sure.
Interesting to have some of these smaller facts on the side, like people taking in too much lead. Also, hi to Ollie and Alex in chat. Nice to have you here.
Yeah, we try to spray the game with cool, real facts.
And they're not so much on the side. But I don't want to spoil.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure you had like a lot of source material and stuff to like go through and read and look at. And how did you like decide on which material to include and which to leave out? So I think there was a lot to do research on, I guess.
Sasha, when you say a lot, you have no idea.
I'm sure I have no idea.
We really had a lot of material. Natalie and Fred, they they gathered, because they've been working on the story for so long before we even started working on the game. They had gathered
20 years or so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they had gathered an amount of documentation about everything related to the Franklin expedition and the setting and Inuit and lots of other topics that are around the story. An amount of information that was really tremendous. And so
Sorry, please go
no,
forward.
go ahead.
No, but I wanted to say just quickly that what helped us as well, and especially in the visual aspect of it, is that there is a TV show called The Terra, which is the name of one of the two ships, produced by Ridley Scott, which is an adaptation from Dan Simon's novel, The Terra, and that actually depicts the events of the Franklin expedition in 8 episodes. It's a marvelous show. It's really, really good, and obviously it helps. It helped into being their researching for the visual aspects helped us, and our director Delphine a lot in terms of choosing the models and choosing all the mood boards and such. It helped a lot.
And sorry.
What am I? I already don't know what to do. Yes.
Okay, do you see the little arrow in the lower right corner of your screen?
Oh, yeah. Okay, wow. I just missed the arrow. Thank you. I turned down the voice volume for now, just so
we can talk about
it's not. Yeah. So because the voicing is great, but what you have to say about the game development is even better. But when you say that you had so much material, Flora, I'm interested in. You said you were a journalist before. Was that a big help for you to thought through all the material to determine what is really a good focus point, what is maybe not as important? Would you say that your experience helped you with that?
Yeah, sure, definitely. Because at some point I was the one who chopped the story into some dialogues for each characters. So I had to populate the dialogues with snippets of information at some point, even though they were not properly written as dialogues. We rewrote them together with Garrett Howen, who helped us write the dialogues, and Igal. But in the beginning, I had to distribute the information among the different characters. And yes, it was definitely my experience as a journalist definitely helped me just pinpoint the little snippets of information that could, at least to me, be of interest and that I thought would just grab players' attention. But of course, it's very subjective. So maybe someone else would have done a completely different job. And there are so many interesting things about that story that I think that we could have come up with a very interesting game, even with the different choices.
But that's so cool to know that there's so much of you in there, just because of the selection of material, actually. That's so cool to think that someone else might have made a completely different game out of the same material for that. Also, just want to highlight that, I guess, so this is the second main mechanic, the switching between the different time eras, right?
Yes.
So now we're in the same place, but at another time with other characters.
Exactly.
And a totally different color scheme. I'm a big fan of very pinpoint color schemes, so it's very pretty.
This is really Delphine. She's so good. So Delphine Fourneau, our art director on the game, she's really, really, really good in colors. She understands colors. Everything is her. The models is her. Part of the animations, all the placement, like the full art direction and execution is from Delphine. 95% of it, and so she's really, really good at it. And there is meaning in the evolution of the color schemes as well, in between levels, because no, there is eras, but this is the first level, and so every character has a color scheme, and this color scheme will evolve through time, depending on the mood of the character. So you'll see it's quite complex and pretty efficient.
Colors. Also, this shows me again, just because we were at Gamescom last week, right? And there are so many games exhibited and so many triple or double A games that have very, very high graphics, very realistic and stuff. And that's nice. That's the right thing for some people. But this is what I totally love: very stylized and simpler art, like here. That's really what I love about many indie games.
Could you elaborate a little bit on the art direction process? So, as Ines just said, the art style is very interesting and very beautiful, and it has this vignette style that you have this small area that is changing when you're interacting with the arrows and looking at from different perspectives on a scene. Was this something that you decided on very early, or were there other directions that you took a look into and that didn't get made, obviously? How did this work?
Florent, do you want to?
Our very first, for our very first prototype, we worked with another art director who had not completely, but a fairly different art style. But the whole game was fairly different, actually. And I think in the end, it worked, but was a little less convincing. We don't know what would have become of that approach if we had kept in that direction. But the thing is, with Delphine, the great thing is that she both has a very strong personal universe, because if you look at Inua and if you look at her other games, you will definitely see the connections and understand the sensibility that was put into making all those games. But she's also incredibly talented in her ability to understand what the authors had to say about what they wanted to convey in the story, and consult and digest all the visual documentation that they would give her. So the synthesis of it all makes for a very unified experience from start to finish, and with a sense of progression that is super efficient, at least to me. I really think that the tension in the game ramps up in part thanks to the progression of the art direction, and also something that is, even though super low poly, super simple, is really interesting when it comes to having a setup that is somehow linked to the real world, because that's what the start of the story is about. And as the story grows more mythical, more weird, more almost magical and surreal, it has to start from a point where it's anchored in reality. And Delphine's style is so versatile that she was able to have this, to convey this progression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great.
A lot of research on her part, a lot of sketches, and a way to mix her propositions with level design from Florent and Armel. Armel, who is our lead developer and game designer. And both of them worked really closely to actually be able to propose scenes with this style that you talked about, this vignette style. They worked very closely in order to achieve that style, which is a bit more complicated than it seems to do right.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you put elements? Where do you where is the camera? How can you make this, little white surrounding there is around the image, so that it works when you pivot from one scene to another, etc.
Yeah, that looks so simple when you look at it, but getting it right in the first place is imaginatively hard, yeah.
So I gotta ask. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, please.
Typically, game design involves a lot of prototyping, right? And you have to like get something playable. What was, if you want to tell, what was like the first part or area of the game that you had playable that you could like experience in some way, something like a vertical slice or so? Was there something that you took and said, okay, let's make this playable to show people how this game should work?
As a prototype, we had one part of the story that it's not actually now in the game, is before Taina gets to the boat. So like the finished game starts when she reaches the boat. But we had a first playable part.
Wow, okay,
as a prototype done in her hotel room. And as a tutorial like level or so, and in a lab that is the lab of the scientists on shore. So it was a very different, like the core mechanics was a bit different. You can still pivot in between scenes and try to look, but it was a more classical point and click style mechanic, like really click and something happens, click and you get an object or whatever, or you can have. But we did this evolve a bit, and then during production. So this was during pre-production and like even like prototyping phase, and then during production, the fourth level, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the first level where you have a new character coming. This is the first level that we had playable, right, Florent?
I don't remember actually. I was trying to remember which one we tackled first, but I'm not completely sure which one it was.
You're in the wreck right now. Yeah, this is
no. It's just like I'm old, and
it's blurred right now.
Yeah, my memory isn't what it used to be.
I think it's fourth level.
The one with Peter?
Yeah.
The first really?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, interesting.
It is probably the level in the entire game, the level that is the most puzzly with the biggest puzzle element. So it's interesting in retrospect.
Yeah.
That we started with that and then went for something simpler puzzle-wise.
Yeah.
Even though usually it's in game design it's the opposite that people do. They start slow with the very core gameplay elements, and then they build up on it until they can explore all the different elements of the systems they build.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the part with Peter is very atypical of the game, I would say. But yeah, sometimes that's how it goes, right? That you realize that there's some other thing in the core, yeah.
But to be perfectly honest, it's confession time. We actually had to rescope the game during production, as it always happens. But yeah, we had several issues, and one of them was called COVID. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it changed a little bit.
Rings a bell.
Yeah. A faint memory of what it was. And so we had to drop one level. So there should have been one extra level in the game. And probably it would have made Peter's arc more closer to the other main character's arc than it actually is in the version of the game that has been shipped. But I mean, it's the same old story with almost all games. You know, sometimes you have to and Igal, you can probably say that way better than I can, but it's probably also the case with when you do film production or TV shows production. Sometimes you have to cut things that because you don't have the money for the set, a set you're supposed to use or Absolutely.
And I find it way less frustrating if you can imagine that it's a possibility from the get-go. Meaning, like, if you expect that things will remain the same, like the scope and the script and even like all characters that you have, etc. Like every brick of the game will remain exactly the same throughout the production. Then you can get frustrated when you have to cut something, when you have to take out something. Knowing is I think it's maturity in those jobs that we do, that knowing that it will probably happen, that you can't actually predict everything, especially not COVID, and so react accordingly. Adapt.
Yeah. Ines, how is it going?
Yeah, so I'm just like playing on the side, but I gotta say it's super interesting that it really is a point-and-click adventure where you use just ideas, and it's not the classic use this item with that, but it's instead use this idea with that person. And it's so cool that basically everything happens in their heads and through the dialogues that they have, instead of combining some weird things and filling your inventory. I mean, I'm filling my inventory with ideas, which sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's an inventory of thoughts and ideas, not objects. Yeah.
That's, this realization is part of what we tried to convey, is that you have no hands, so you can't actually grab any item. So once you realize you have no hands, then you just like wonder, okay, but what am I? And then maybe you come to the conclusion that you are a spirit. And if you don't come to that conclusion, the game tells you at some point.
Oh, really? Is there like a direct who you are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
at some
super
point,
intrigued.
It's fairly. It's not too in your face, but at some point there's one. Yes.
I also have to ask about what I realized very quickly, and I think Ines might as well, is that the whole game and the story is very sensitive about the indigenous people, the Inuit, and their stories and their way of living and stuff like that. How did you make sure that people are that you're like portraying them right, and that you're not like using stereotypes and stuff like that, but you really, at least in my view, you're really trying to do them right with the stories you tell.
It's an interesting topic because it is really for us kind of like a point of being cautious about what we're trying to depict and the story we're trying to tell. This is not a story that is, for example, it's built upon a legend, which is the legend of the giant bear, and so to interpret that legend, we asked to an Inuit author to help us in writing that interpretation of a cautionary tale that is like a very famous Inuit cautionary tale, the big bear, the giant bear. And so this is the main part. We asked to several co-authors or counselors to read the story and help us in writing the parts that concerns the Inuit, because it's a story that is not an Inuit story. It's not neither like a totally non-Inuit story, because it happens on Inuit land and and Inuit characters are involved. So it was a collaboration between them and us and them, and so we collaborated and tried to make like that material work in respect of like their identity and their sensitivity reading of it. And then we have Inuit characters that we need to voice, so we could not voice them with non-Inuit actors and actresses. So we made a casting through a production company based in Montreal and Igloolik, which is in the Nunavut region of Canada. And so they helped us in finding the right actors and actresses to voice our Inuit characters. And then we had Tanya Tagaq, who's an Inuit singer, throat singer and musician. The right to use some of her tracks, and so we had the right to use her tracks, which brings so much depth into really the mood of all the levels, with the sense of spirituality that we're trying to bring.
That's like really inspiring that you portrayed a group of people that you do not belong to, but you went with it in a sensible way and including them for real. That's so cool. And actually having throat singing in there is amazing.
It's actually really, like as Igal said, we put a lot of thought into trying to do the things the right way. But also, I really think that the core, I wouldn't say message, but the core, what Inua really is about, is something that is very familiar to us as French people. It's more about colonialism and arriving someplace and refusing to listen to the people who already live here, and refusing to put yourself in doubt and question. And this is something we French people are very familiar with, because France has been a colonial power for a long time, and I think the critique of that part of French history is something that belongs to us as creators, French creators. So we were very careful to every element that was related to the Inuit culture absolutely had to feel right, and we tried to have elders consulting. We worked with Thomassier for the tale, so we tried to be very careful about all that. But the core message Inua is about, it's actually weirdly more personal in a way and more close to who we are as game designers than it would look like from the outside. If you just see the game and think, okay, this is a game about Inuit culture. It's actually also about European and Occidental culture, a lot of it.
It's a critique of the colonial spirit, the
Yes.
colonial state of mind that still exists a lot in Canada, and actually that exists as well a lot in a part of the French culture still, and so we try to address it through this story.
So I'm gonna close the game for now, just so I can focus a bit more on our discussion. But I think I got a pretty good insight, I guess, on like the main mechanics, and I'm very excited to play some more later on with the voices.
Well played, Ines.
Turn back on.
Congratulations on finishing first level.
Yeah.
With I just needed help once because I didn't find the arrow.
Yeah.
Okay, turning down the screenshot.
You should get an achievement now for finishing the first chapter.
There is one actually.
Really?
Oh yeah.
No, for real, yeah.
Played the version on itch.io, or no, it was not itch. It was GOG. It was it's not
yes.
on itch. It was GOG, and I didn't get any achievements. But
I think I got
not
two
important.
achievements. I think I got two achievements or so. Yeah.
I don't remember where we put them. I'm actually not such a big fan of achievements, so we kind of
Can
know that
imagine.
they have to be there. But I don't know what you think about them, Igal, but I'm not a big fan of them. So I don't remember where we put them, actually.
It's for Steam. It's mainly Steam achievements.
Yeah. I think that's the easiest way to implement achievements, just to put them at the end of a chapter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't want them, you can do it like that.
It's totally a thing where I get that many games are not focused on having these achievements, but it's just something that you just do because it's there, there are people that like it. Just put them in. I guess. But yeah, what you said about working with Inuit and so on is I feel like that's inspiring in two ways, because it's super cool for the players to have like really good input in there, and also inspiring for us as game devs, just the way you handled that. So very cool on two fronts, I think.
You
One
could always do better. I think it's important to notify that we did our best, considering. I think like we did really what we could considering the situation, but as well the situation helped us in a way, because it would have been preferable that we travel there and then we cast there ourselves, instead of like giving the mission to other people and to talk to people like IRL. But with the COVID, it could not happen, and it would have been way more expensive, and we had not such a huge budget. So it was like good, like we could do like really the most that we can, and convince people to work with us like better from like a distance than if we had to go to and travel there. Would have been like a harder, like a more tenuous process.
One more thing that I find interesting that we didn't really talk about yet, I guess, is that your project was a cooperation of the Pixel Hunt, then IKO, and Arte France also, right? Could you tell us a bit about that cooperation, just how it came to be, how it was to work together? Was there anything special that resulted from it? Just a bit insight into the cooperation.
So first thing first, initially it's IKO who started working on the project. Like it wouldn't have existed if it weren't for Igal meeting with Natalie and Fred.
Yeah. No, but no, that's true.
That's the end of the story.
No, but it would have had existed neither if Florent didn't jump on board, because like the like I was telling, the real like experience in video game making and production and funding, etc., was more on Florent's side. So I brought him like a beginning of a project, and we actually very early on started like developing it together. We need to say that before it was a game, it was an interactive film or something. We Florent and me come from a very special era in time in the French media scene, which is the web documentary era. So like 2007, 8, because of the internet arriving strongly and a bit of funding being made available at Arte and our public funding bodies like the Sensei, etc. There was like a beginning of a trend of web documentaries, interactive documentaries, web documentaries, and even interactive fiction being produced, and then it wore off, and then became VR mainly. Like those people started to make VR mainly, and so we tried to make an interactive project, but it was a hybrid style project that nobody really understood. And then after a while of
Not even us, maybe.
yeah, probably not even us ourselves. So after a while we develop, and after a while we say, okay, no, stop. If we want to make it interactive, it's going to be a game. We're going to market it as a game. And at that moment, we asked Arte for some development money. We asked our region, like the northern region, for some development money. We got those funding, and then we started to really like forward there.
It must be said though that Natalie and Fred originally also they come from the movies. They've been they wrote movies, they wrote documentaries, and they knew next to nothing about video games. And even as players, they didn't play games. And so to begin with, the idea to work on something that would be part a film, part a game, and to which extent things were a little bit blurry, but I think we could have figured it out. Would we have been able to find the money to do that? But we weren't able. So yeah, so we will never figure it out. But so the thing is, gradually we went more and more towards making an actual video game, and that brings us to a moment where it meant giving in more and more on all the codes that video games entail, which had made things a little bit more complicated for the initial authors, Natalie and Fred, as we were progressing in the project, because they had no experience with game. They had not, like, they found games interesting, but they didn't really feel compelled to play video games and so on. So at some point, we just agreed that we would have to to finish the project without them, because they were not in their zone of comfort and not super happy with how things were going, because they tried to produce things for games, and we were always the bad guy saying, no, wait,
Oh, no.
no, not exactly, yeah. And so at some point said, okay, let's have the project happen, and we'll see. They were kind enough to grant us the freedom of trying to make an actual video game and not something that was akin to a movie. And but before that, Arte came into play, and we are very lucky in France to have Arte as a potential co-producer for games in France and in Germany, because at least 2 games were made by German teams, if I remember correctly. 2 Arte-produced games. And at the times, they could either co-produce a game with you, or publish it, or do both. So first, we signed a deal with them about co-production only. Then we looked for a publisher, but considering the very specific game we were making, fairly quickly, Arte was the best option we had as a publisher too. So a little later in the process, we also signed a publishing deal with Arte. So in the end, they are both co-producers and publishers for the project.
And just on the side, I opened the video game page of Arte, and they worked on some pretty cool projects, I gotta say.
Yes, I've been told that in Germany, Arte still have this image of a TV channel specializing in very boring classic music concerts.
Yeah, for some
Yes.
people it's that, yeah.
And it used to be a little bit like that in France, maybe 15 years ago. But
It
no,
changed a lot. It changed a lot.
no, it's fair. That's what I was going to ask you about, Igal. But I think, no, it's fair to say that Arte's image has completely evolved into something that is way more acknowledged and recognized by a really younger population.
If in like younger than 30 years old population, you know that the Arte's average viewer on TV, I don't know, you say in grille des programmes in French, like the official program of the channel on TV. The average age of the viewer is 65 years old. I think it's even a bit more, it's 67 in Germany. But in the younger audiences in France, I don't know about Germany, but in France, they're the coolest channel. Arte is the coolest. They're on Twitch. I produce a Twitch show for them about video games on Twitch. Yeah, they have web series, games, VR. They produce stuff for TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat. They're everywhere.
And I mean, props to them for going that route early on, because they could have waited much longer, but would have done them good, I guess. So
it's even like it's even amazing that they were able to, as you mentioned, jump in early, because I think their first game started production in 2012 or 13, so it's fairly early. And that they are able to actually not only keep doing that, but grow, because now they are also publishing, and they are a publisher that is more and more famous. I wouldn't say like they are huge, but they are definitely
they are learning the game.
Yeah, they are learning. for instance, at Gamescom in the indie area, one of the games was selected to be in the Nintendo booth. So it's a very nice feat, and in Day of the Devs, and so some Arte games now show up in indie favorites moments. So I would really argue that for a public funded enterprise, they are really doing well. Of course, they still have to improve. They still don't completely know all the ropes, and it's a completely different job than what they used to do for network television, and they still have to adapt to that. And also, they still have to understand that, contrary to what they were used to in TV, where Arte's name was enough for all journalists to pay attention, the struggle for attention in video games is so fierce that nobody's waiting for Arte, so they have to take that into consideration and muscle up their communication game. But yeah, I'm really super glad that we worked with them, and super happy that they actually work with video games.
And it's also a good message for video games, right? I mean, I remember just 3 years ago when I talked to someone and told them I worked in games, and they were like, "What? But that's so unethical. Aren't those all these shooters? And I can't get my sons to play to stop playing games and so on." I was like, that's such an old conception of video games. And I think it's really great that, I mean, Arte producing video games shows that there is more to them, I think, right?
Yeah, the Twitch like kind of TV show we are doing with them about video game really says video game is an art form, and so that to have artist label on it is really important. They have people in house that believe that very strongly, that video games is an art form, and so it helps a lot in conveying that message to a wider audience.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 4:10.
Oh no.
We had a very good time. Do you have one more question, Sasha?
Okay, one last one.
Okay, one last one.
You already said that you had to make some changes to the game while during production. Is there something specific that you would have liked to do differently, or if you would do the project again, that you would do differently now that you have this experience?
I can think of stuff.
We can say one thing each, maybe.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
I'm not sure.
That sounds great.
I'm not sure we'll agree on this, but it's great. It's cool. Different opinions. Please.
Do you want to start?
Please go.
My probably my biggest. I wouldn't call that a regret, because I'm really. I want to stress how much of a miracle it is to have any game finished. Games are, I'm not sure everybody's aware of that, but games are so complicated and so delicate and so complex in all the different talents they must have work together, and all the shit that can happen and go wrong in almost all stages. Yes. So that being said, I think that we had a concept with Inua that was very strong, the idea of having the same locations and in 3 time periods. And I wish we would have even more time to dig into that mechanic and do it even deeper. And so maybe it's a little lacking in complexity and in the way it's intertwined. Not complexity in the I don't understand what's going on way, but complexity in a I've done step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm able to understand that the game still waits for me to do step 9. I don't remember where I stopped counting, but you know what I mean. So I think the core idea is really cool. The implementation is also not too bad, but could have been even better
Mhm.
if we add maybe the time, maybe the talent, maybe the energy, because at some point, you're tired,
Yeah.
to just go a little deeper into the execution.
Mhm.
Yeah. And if I may add one little stuff, like I think we have a great end of game. It's a very short game. It's like less than 3 hours, I think, to complete. And I think we have a great ending with a kind of a twist to it. And it's a very narrative game, so the ending has something to like bring and to convey. But because it's a collective enterprise doing video games, and because there were different actors sculpting the story, we couldn't agree exactly on one very like a strict form of the ending, and I would have preferred to have it a bit more longer to bring a better sense of conclusion. I think still it's a very, very cool ending, and it has one amazing like really the best cinematic of the game. Video for the ending is really the best one of all of them. So it's really, really cool. But I would have loved to add 1 minute or two to bring a sense of conclusion to it, like a sense of it's the end, it drags you, the emotion stays a bit with you, and it's purely editing. Nothing in the meaning would have got lost or would have been added, but like really like just a sense of like dragging it a little bit. And so
Hearing that, I can really feel that you're from movies.
probably maybe it's like the professional like a default, like to want to drag stuff too much, or I don't know, but yeah, this is my little thing that I would have had. We had more time and we'd maybe like agree on it.
But it sounds nice because both of your points somehow burn down to I would have liked more of it, like more. And it's not something like, I wish we wouldn't have done that. I wish that worked differently. It's just, I wish there was more. So that's cool.
I wish I never heard about this game at all.
Oh no!
No, but I mean, no, of course not. Of course. And also, really, it's just so incredible to just be able to have people work together for so long, and you have to try as much as you can to please everyone, or at least for everyone to be happy with what they bring to the table in the game. And so I would probably say that if you were to ask anyone from the team, they would have things they would have loved to make different. But I think that also everybody's pretty happy with the result. Nobody's like, get my name out of the credits. So it's probably the most important part. The fact that, everybody is happy to have done this. Everybody has learned a lot. And everybody will do things different next time, but that's also kind of the way, the entire purpose of making something is also to learn how to make it differently and maybe better the next time.
We had a wonderful team. I would just like to take 1 minute to just name people because they're amazing artists. They're amazing artists. Delphine Fourneau, Zif, is now working at Nerial, which is a studio that was bought by Devolver, I think.
Rains, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
She's
And Card Shark more recently.
Yeah, and she's an amazing artist. She's so talented and she's so nice at the same time. It hurts. Like she's amazing, an amazing person, really. Armel Gibson, is our lead dev and game designer. He's responsible for a game called Vignette that was on iOS, and he's extremely talented too. He's done an amazing job on Inua. Swan Menage is our sound and music guy. He's the guy who actually took Tanya Tagaq's music and actually made moods out of very moody tracks and used them in addition to his own work, to have moods that evolve throughout the levels on each characters. He's a very, very talented sound designer for games too. We had Nathalie Frassoni and Frédéric Bouvier, our authors. We had Thomas Simon Joc. He's helped me with the names, Florent.
Owen for the dialogues, writing dialogues.
Yeah, Gareth Owen for dialogues. We had Thomas Simon Joc for the tale, writing as our Inuit co-author.
And Monica.
Monica Itousar-Jouak, yes. Monica Itousar-Jouak, who is our elder, who helped in the sensitivity reading.
And Billy Gauthier also.
And Billy Gauthier as well, who is not an elder, but he's an Inuit from Labrador, who helped us a lot at the beginning of the project. He's been of a great help. Do we have extra?
And the people at Arte, of course.
And the people at Arte,
Adrien, Olivier, Melanie, very nice and supportive and helping us with very cool feedback.
Yeah.
So yeah, nice.
Thanks
and of course,
thanks for crediting
forgetting
everyone. That's great.
Yeah, we're forgetting a lot of people, but yeah, we can't stay here forever. So sorry.
It takes a village to make a game, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And it's really cool to shine a spotlight on everyone. Well, thank you too a lot for being here. I'll link Inua again in chat, and there's also a demo. So, like, if you're not sure about it or anything, I mean, you can just try it out. Just try it out and see how you like the game.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks
Sasha and Ines. Yeah, thank you very much
for having us.
And also, you're working on the WEC right now, as we mentioned earlier. So check that out if you want. And at some point, maybe we can talk about that when it's out. We'll see.
Let's try to finish it.
Yeah, that's first. Good luck.
I've been waiting for so long to play like the demo, etc. Because I don't want to spoil it. Please do finish it now.
And also mentioning that the WEC also has a demo on Steam that you can try out. I tried it at Gamescom. Very happy about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, with that, thanks a lot. It was great to have you here to try Inua a bit. Just want to very quickly mention that down in the info, we have our Discord channel linked. So if anyone, I don't know, thinks late of some questions for the devs or anything, or wants to give us some feedback on the stream, join our Discord. That's the best place to talk to us. And we also linked our newsletter there, because we have a newsletter called The Narrative Outlook, which is a newsletter focused on narrative games, always highlights which narrative games are coming out, which events that might be interesting for narrative gamers are coming up, and so on. So subscribe to that if that's something for you and if you want to. Yeah, and with that, goodbye and see you in 4 weeks for our next Campfire conversation. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.